Okay, so I have the mana necessary to do 6 damage with a fireball, but that's not enough to win. I'll just spend this turn hitting with Mishra's Factory, and then assuming nothing catastrophic happens, I'll be able to take the victory next turn. Alright, so we knock him down to 4, but Living Artifact will take him back up to 5. That's okay though, I can still fireball through that. Alright, Healing Salve is annoying, but with my factories and fireball, it's not that big a deal. Oh, Hurricane for 4. And I have 4 life. Crap, do I just lose? No, I can win. The rules of Magic have changed a bit, but with the classic rules, I can turn my Mishra's Factory into an assembly worker. Once that resolves, the Hurricane will also resolve as well, but back in the day, you didn't immediately lose after hitting 0 life. You only lost at the end of combat or a switch in phases. This will give me an opportunity to use Swords of Plowshare on my own assembly worker to exile it and gain me 2 life, which is twice the life I need to not immediately lose. The turn will come back to me, and since Prismat was so kind as to hurricane himself to fireball range, I just need to slam his face with a fireball, and hell yeah! Wow, that one was crazy. I can't believe I caught that. I thought for sure I was screwed. But no, I'm a wizard. Hey dudes, as you can see, we're back with Shandalar, and today I'm mostly going to be focusing on clearing up the mess I kind of ignored in the previous video. I have some good cards, which was my previous goal, but many of the cities have been captured, so before we can focus on dungeons or the wizards, I need to spend some time saving cities and hopefully score a few more mana links doing some quests while I'm at it. As a secondary objective, I'm also going to be hoarding as many life gain spells as I can get a hold of, because your life total carries over in dungeons and the wizard towers. I've also hit some metric that makes some enemies scared of me, and willing to give me stuff to not duel them. That's really handy, and they can give you some cool stuff, but I'm not sure what triggers this. Oh well, the next city is being held by one of the Red Wizard's Centaur War Chiefs, and my ante is a Swords to Plowshares. Which is rough, because that's a really good card, but it is what it is. The ante doesn't matter if I don't lose, right? So I'll just win, and that will be that. The Centaur starts with a Mons Goblin Raiders on the field, but that's not the biggest hurdle I've ever gone through, so it's not a huge deal. They start by adding an Eternal Warrior to the Goblin, which seems like a waste to me, but whatever. They have a Vigilant 1/1 now. My opening hand is super land heavy, which isn't great against such an aggressive deck, but I do have a Factory and a Juggernaut, so I'm not too worried about this. I should be able to power through. I draw a Greed and then a Fireball, and I decide to take a turn off and kill the Goblin before it gets out of hand. I'm just kind of worried that I'm going to get like triple bolted or something, and I really want to avoid taking extra damage. It's also sort of a 2-for-1, which, made me more willing to do it. Next, the Centaur drops an Alibaba, and that is about the least threatening thing they could play. That being said, I haven't seen a 2 or 3 drop from the computer yet, so I'm under the assumption that Ali was the only 1 drop in hand and the rest of the cards are either lands or bigger than 3 mana. So I take a land drop off to strip mine a mountain, but I do get some more damage in this turn. The Centaur finally drops a Plains and a Savannah Lions. I didn't realize this deck was 2 colors, so I wasn't accounting for the Savannah Lions being a possibility. I might need to chump the Lion with my Factory and hope to win with Juggernaut, but I'm not sure what the correct play is. I decide to hold back the Factory to block and strip mine the Plains, hoping this will color screw the Centaur. They attack with both, so I block and kill the Baba, taking 2 but removing a threat. This worked out well for me because I draw a Dark Ritual, so I can play a Swamp and cast Juggernaut. Next, a Smoke comes out, and this doesn't really do anything. If anything, this kind of screws the computer because they've been playing low to the ground, go wide creatures, and Factory is a land during untap, so I can still attack with full power, while this might limit the Centaur's plays. Then he questionably attacks into me, and I block with the Juggernaut. Juggernaut doesn't get removed, and I just sort of win this, I think? I draw another land, which is getting ridiculous, but I do have the advantage now, as I attack for 7, bringing the opponent to 11. I draw another land, and then bring them to 4. They drop a dragon whelp, but they need to block my Juggernaut, so this isn't an issue for me. I draw another land, big surprise there, but it doesn't matter. I swing in with everything, and the whelp blocks the Juggernaut, taking the centaur to 2. I also cast Greed, kinda just for the hell of it, but also in case things go very wrong. But instead of it going very wrong, it goes right, and I draw a lightning bolt. So I just win the game. It's rare to win when you get flooded, but at least I had a threat, and they only played bad cards. But I'm still dealing with these captured cities, and up next is the White Wizard's Winged Stallion. My ante is a lightning bolt, which is pretty comparable to Swords to Plowshare in the amount of value it can bring to a game. It removes less things, but it is more versatile in its use cases. Either way, as long as I win, this isn't a problem. The Winged Stallion starts with a War Elephant and immediately hits it with a Holy Strength, but I don't really mind since this just makes my sword more valuable as I take out 2 cards. My opening hand is way better this round, and I open up by removing the War Elephant. Generally, it's a good idea to wait till the last possible moment to act so you don't inform your opponent of your options, but this is a computer, so I'm not too worried about revealing information. Yeah, so I just remove the elephant on my main phase and get on with my day. The horse drops an island sanctuary, which is funny and thematic, but I have a disenchant for when it really matters. If it matters. I play the Sylvan Library to filter and maybe draw a couple extra cards. Then a Mesa Pegasus comes down, but I manage to draw a terror by looking 3 deep, so once again I just remove it. Then out comes a Howling Mine, so I get to draw an extra card, and as thanks, I disenchant the Howling Mine, preventing the horse, that probably has better cards than me, from drawing too many cards. Next comes out Life Tap, which is annoying, but doesn't actively do anything that brings me closer to losing, so I don't really care about this. I end up casting a Lightning Bolt just to be mana efficient, and because I'm sitting on enough removal that I might as well push towards a win a little bit. The horse doesn't do anything, and I put out Juggernaut, which is going to speed this whole process up for me. Granted, I can't attack through Island Sanctuary, but I do have a disenchant sitting within the first 3 cards of my library, so I'll just draw that next turn, and then I can attack with the Juggernaut. Then the computer does something really confusing. It taps a plains, then plays a plains, then takes mana burn. I'm not sure what caused the AI to do that, but that's not a winning play in my opinion. Either way. I attack again with Juggernaut and pump it with my Howl from Beyond for 3 mana, which deals 8 damage and brings the horse to 10 life, making the game far closer. This wasn't really an optimal play because the horse is gaining 1 life for each forest I tap, and each forest only contributed to 1 damage, so I would have gotten the same result from casting the Howl from Beyond for 1 and avoiding the forests, but this was more fun. The horse casts a psionic entity, but I kind of don't care. I activate Library again and see a Dark Ritual and a Fireball, so I just pay 8 life to keep all 3 cards. I play the land because I can, and while this is a forest, so it is just going to cancel itself out, by grabbing it, I'll be able to dig 3 cards deeper next turn, instead of the 2 that I would have if this was still in the library. And I might find another Lightning Bolt or something. Either way, I bolt the psionic entity, fireball the horse for 5, and swing in with Juggernaut, putting the horse at 3. It would be really cool if I draw a lightning bolt. The horse taps a plains to deal 1 damage to itself, and now I'm kind of convinced this horse is, throwing the game and is actually my ally. Anyway, I dig with the Sylvan to see if I find a bolt, and I don't, so instead I just swing in with the Juggernaut and free another city. This part of the game was pretty easy. Most of these games didn't really require out-of-the-box thinking, and the AI has been making some questionable choices. Even when things looked a little grim, like in my game against Drakur, Servant of the Red Wizard, it wasn't that bad. I got down to 3 pretty quickly in this game, but I was able to animate my Shivan Dragon after a contract from below ditched my dragon and drew me into the Animate Dead. I also got a Stream of Life, which gave me the time needed to stabilize. This game was interesting because Drakur had a mana flare out, but I was able to get out of Mishra's factory, which just allowed me to dump extra mana into the factory and avoid the burn for the later parts of the game, when it actually mattered. This is just another thing that makes Factory so dominant at this point in the game. You could turn it into a creature as many times as you need, even if it's already a creature. Doesn't really come up without mana burn, but it sure is useful when that was a game rule. I say that, but I did take a mana burn again when casting my Hypnotic Spectre because I'm stupid, but at least I'm favored to win the game now. I take Drakor down to 1, then like a coward he doesn't swing into my Hypnotic Spectre, so I finish the game by swinging with both my flyers, as it doesn't matter which one he blocks. This is going really well for me. I haven't lost a game yet today, and I'm feeling pretty jazzed about that, but also the drama is kinda gone. How interesting is this video if I just walk you through how I beat up random piles of cards piloted by Windows 95? It doesn't seem that impressive, you know? The next game, however, was pretty brutal and tedious. I got put under a Meekstone and Kismet, which isn't a lock, but it does slug the game up pretty hard. I was being killed by 1,000 cuts, and even had to deal with a Psychic Venom which shut down my factory. This didn't really matter though, because Contract from Below is absolutely insane and drew me into a bunch of removal. I had Stabilized here, and then Whimsy got played, and Board Wiped us. That held me together until I could draw a Juggernaut, and a few turns later, after mowing through his permanents, I won this game as well. Like I said, this felt like it was getting too easy. I was undefeated today, and had worked myself out of pretty much every hole I had found myself in. The next hand looks pretty rough though. I have a handful of gas, but I really need to draw a swamp to do anything. So, I draw an Animate Dead, then a Greed, then a Disenchant, then a Crawl Worm, then Contract from Below, then a Brainwash. I really need to cut this stupid card. Then I drew a Plains, so, you know, I can activate my factory to block a non-flyer or get in for 2. This is getting frustrating. Anyway, then I drew a Lightning Bolt, and after that, while I was at 2, I drew a Hurricane. I have no idea what I thought would get me out of this, but it definitely was not a Hurricane, so I was forced to take the L, and I got my first loss for the day. That was kind of a bummer, but at least now I'm not stomping through literally every match. This game was way more funny in retrospect than it was at the time, though. Lady Luck taketh and Lady Luck giveth, because the next game was a cakewalk. Using a Strip Mine, an Ice Storm, a Disenchant, and a Swords to Plowshare, I was able to completely deny Prismat of its mana, and just bullied this poor dragon, which got me a Fellwar Stone. That's really nice to have with a 4-color deck, so this was another great game for me. Then, on my way to face another city, I got stopped by a High Priest, and got stuck using a different deck than my own. I hadn't experienced this before, and it was a bit of a shock to see a handful of blue cards in my Sans Blue list. It didn't help that my hand kind of sucked, but I had read somewhere that this could happen, and as far as I could tell, the prevailing wisdom is that these decks are pretty good, so you should use them if you have the choice. I didn't have the choice, and it's hard to say if a deck is good or not with only one use, but just as I stabilized with my mono blue island home deck, this dickhead casts Armageddon. What a piece of shit. Yeah, play this slow mono blue island home deck against my mono white Armageddon aggro deck. This was a crock of shit. The only time I felt cheated in this entire game. I'm not sure if I was supposed to have a choice to play this deck or not, but I did not have a choice. Oh well. A loss isn't worth crying about, and it was pretty funny to see Armageddon just as I stabilized. But this continued to not be my day when I moved on to save the city. I battled against Mandarang, and by turn 2, he had a 7/6 Hypnotic Spectre, and I had 1 Plains and nothing to cast with it. Oh well, you win some and you lose some. On the plus side, the village next to this was selling an Armageddon, so I snapped that bad boy up, as well as a Spell Blast, which can be useful. Anyway, I did manage to beat Mandarang on the next attempt, so all's well that ends well. From here, I was informed of the Tome of Enlightenment, which I could get for 750 gold at Unicorn's Oasis. The Tome of Enlightenment gives you the ability to run 1 more card than the limit, and the limit is 3 of any card if you're in a 40 card deck, 4 of any card in a 60 card deck, and maybe it goes up from there, but I've never run more than 60 cards, so I have no idea. But that seems pretty useful, so I set off to Unicorn's Oasis. it was pretty uneventful traveling there, so when I get there I check for a quest, and I have the chance to get any land as long as I can defeat a winged stallion. That seemed like a pretty sweet deal to me, so I accepted the quest, leave, and purchase the Tome of Enlightenment, and practically stumble into a winged stallion at their front door. This game went pretty well for me. I started with a Dark Ritual and a Crawl Worm, and by turn 4 I had drawn the green mana sources I needed to cast the worm. I did get delayed a turn when I tried to paralyze the Mesa Pegasus, and it got counterspelled. So I used Armageddon to avoid having more blockers put in front of my Crawl Worm. The Winged Stallion was helpful again, because it tapped the planes it had just played to burn itself down to 6, which means my Crawl Worm will just win next turn. I'm not sure why the Winged Stallions keep mana burning themselves, but oh well. I got a great haul from this victory, getting 2 relatively okay counterspells, a Prodigal Sorcerer, and a Tropical Island. So I naturally took the cards, but then this bastard teleported me across the map. Seriously, I got sent to the opposite side of the map. Look at this. I'm over by Unicorn Sanctum, and I have 3 days to turn in a quest for Unicorn's Oasis. If you fail to turn in a quest on time, that city will never give you another quest, so I was a little worried about this. I did take the opportunity to buy out some cards on my walk across the entire map, but then I started to wondering if entering a city and interacting causes time to move forward, so I panicked and focused only on getting back in time. Which did work out for me, because I was able to get back in time. And I took another City of Brass for the trouble. Strip Mine might have been a better choice, and there are a couple other lands worth considering, but I was trying to get to a 5-color deck as quickly as possible, and City of Brass really helps with that. I've also decided that I do want to start dealing with these witters pretty soon. Witters? What's a witter? I've also decided that I want to start dealing with these wizards pretty soon, if only to get them to stop capturing so many damn cities. So I was on my way to the Blue Castle when I came across... Holy shit! That's a Black Lotus. Ooh. Okay, well, I need to duel this dude. Mana Short is maybe okay, and the other cards suck, but that's a Black Lotus. Black Lotus is a Black Lotus. I really hope I don't lose this game. I have no ante at stake, but I'd give up half of my cards for a Black Lotus, so I'm, like, actually locked in on this one. My opening hand is land heavy, but that's not the biggest deal in the world. I have good access to my colors, and Strip Mine can be thought of as a spell. Sort of. Anyway, I strip mined his first island because fuck him. Having so many lands does prove to be useful because this dragon used a Psychic Venom on my first land. So I should try to avoid using it if possible. Otherwise, I draw some removal, I get another Psychic Venom dropped on me, but again, I don't really need to tap those lands because I have so many. So it doesn't really matter much. Then I spend the next few turns removing his threats until I manage to get a Crawl Worm into play. The Crawl Worm doesn't end up doing anything for me though, because I accidentally skipped the main combat phase on the first turn it could attack. Oops. And then, you know, it uses Word of Binding, and also he has a Meekstone out, so I lost out on attacking with my Crawl Worm. That's unfortunate, but not the end of the world. Then I play a Shivan Dragon, and I don't make the same mistake, attacking with it and pumping it to 9 before I hit him in the face. I don't really have a path to victory here, but with a Stream of Life, a Fountain of Youth, and a Bolt, I'm not too worried about surviving long enough to find a solution. Then Whim cracks their Black Lotus to cast Siren's Call after all my stuff is tapped down, so he manages to wipe my board. That kinda sucks, but the Worm and Dragon were tapped down by Meekstone anyway, and since he's got 2 Meekstones out, it's not like they were gonna likely help me win anyway. Whim also takes 2 damage from Mana Burn, so all's well that ends well, I suppose. Then Whim spends a couple of turns hitting me with a Yoshin Soldier for 1, and I spend those turns paying 2 mana to gain 1 life, so nothing really happened here. I then get another Stream of Life and go up to 25, so this game feels like it might go on forever. Case in point, I blow up his planes with an Ice Storm and drop his Royal Assassin with a Bolt. So then we just sort of keep looking at each other for like 10 million turns. Then I draw an Earthquake, and I rip that shit for all the mana I have. This means I take 6 damage from the 3 Psychic Venoms he's put on me, but we also both take 10, and that brings our life totals to 4 and 8. I mean, it would have honestly probably been smarter to wait out until I could have just one-shot him with this, but I was getting bored and wanted to do something. It turned out to be a solid decision because in a couple of turns I got access to Contract from Below. At least, that's how it should have played out, but I fucked up my natural selection and put the cards in the wrong order. So first I drew the Badlands. Then he drops a Colossus Asardia. I'm at 10 health now because of the fountain, but this is a problem. I can't take 2 hits from this, and I can paralyze it, but I don't think that really does anything. Well, it does tap the Colossus, so I use it and expect Wim to untap the Colossus with the Paralyze because I thought it would bypass the 9 required to untap Colossus, but he doesn't do that, and instead uses Twiddle to untap it and cast a Carrion Ants. But he doesn't attack me with the Colossus, and I don't really know why. Anyway, I rip the Contract from Below, and Wim attempts to power sink it, but doesn't even use all his mana for it, so I pay the tax and draw my cards. And I draw a Lightning Bolt and a Fireball, which can do 4 or more damage, and I have managed to win a fucking Black Lotus, baby! Ooh. Oh. That game was a lot. That game was a lot. Oh, I have a Black Lotus. Oh. And with that, I've managed to get together enough good cards that I can have a 5-color deck that's at least relatively consistent. And I can also have a 60-card deck as well. Obviously, a 40-card deck is more consistent than a 60-card deck, and it's probably correct to say 40 cards, but I am worried about getting mailed out against better decks, and since I'm running more of a control list than an aggro list, I tend to drag games out. So the risk of getting decked out is higher than it would be with like a fast aggro list. Also, I did lose my Sylvan Library somewhere along the way, which is unfortunate because that card probably contributed more to me winning than any card that isn't named Mishra's Factory. But it is what it is, right? My land base also isn't great for 5-color, but it could be a lot worse. Hopefully it'll get better as we go. Also, I won an Ivory Tower, which is super awesome. I don't really have the consistent card advantage to make this as busted as it could be, but it's still a really good card. After this, I stumble into the ability to buy any card I want. This took me a second to realize this meant that I could buy multiple cards, and when I realized that, I went ham. I couldn't buy everything I wanted, but I got up to 4 City of Brass and 4 Strip Mines, got back some of the Swords to Plowshares I'd lost, as well as another Lightning Bolt, and a bunch of dual lands I was missing. Sylvan Library costs 1,000 gold, which I guess makes sense, but that did mean I couldn't pick it up. But I did buy up anything I could think of that might help me out. This was a huge boon for me, so I dropped what I was doing to go and edit my deck. And I messed around with this for a while and was pretty happy with the deck that I had come up with by the time I was finished. But always remember that I'm really stupid, and I made a pretty big error with this deck list. And by error, I mean there is a card in this list that does literally nothing with how I've built the deck. If you can figure it out, let everyone know how much less stupid than me you are by posting it in the comments. But we've gone through what is around 10 hours of playtime, so I think we'll cut it there. I still have to go through all this footage, record this thing you're looking at now, edit it all down. Plus, I need to travel for Easter to see the nephew and the rest of the family. Of course, I definitely didn't finish this until after Easter, so I hope those of you that celebrate Easter are having a good time with it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you give a shit, and I hope you have a magical day.